I make a motion to accept the minutes from last month's meeting.
And seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, public comment. Why don't we have DOT talk now? All
Okay,
right,
yep. This is John Hannafin. Welcome, members of the Norwalk Shellfish Commission, as we continue our collaboration for the Walk Bridge program. Tonight, we wanted to present to you some changes that we've made to the deep permits. And wanted to keep you guys in the loop and present our changes. And I'm going to turn it over to Chris Brown from H&B, who will walk you through those changes that we're making.
He's muted. Chris, you're muted. Chris, you're still muted.
How
You're
about now?
good. You're good. You're good.
Okay, good deal. Hang on, if you don't mind. So,
Are you going to share a screen with us?
yep, I sure am. There. Okay. So I think we had a little bit of challenge here getting going. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes, Walking Bridge, North Shellfish Commission project and permit update.
Yep. Sounds good. Okay, so as John introduced, we wanted to keep you updated as the design gets finalized, and our permit applications are also going through a bit of a refinement as well. And we wanted to take this opportunity to give you an update on what those adjustments and updates to the deep structured dredge and fill permit application will look like. And then we'll open it up to any questions and open discussion as well. So I think primarily what we want to do tonight is really kind of just stay focused on those deep permit updates. So back in early March, you should have and may have had an opportunity to see the deep application that was submitted. Since that time, what we wanted to do as the design was getting finalized and other details were coming to light, we wanted to offer some clarity and further explanation as far as some of the details that are included in the application as well. So when you see the application, it's organized in various sections and parts, and there's a number of attachments and appendices that really pull all of the project information together, all of the consultation with yourselves, the Harbor Management Commission, other agencies, and so it's a very detailed application. What we're going to focus on tonight really is in this area here. That's where the primary adjustment to the application is made in what we call the narrative, where we describe the nature of the work, durations, the type of construction work that goes on in order to build the new walk bridge. So within that part of the application, we are modifying primarily question 2A, and that's the description of the construction activities. So it's been a while, I think, since we've kind of seen some of the specific construction activities, but if you remember from previous discussions that we had with you all, we broke the project down into what we call construction activities. And the construction activities describe those discrete operations that take place in order to build the new bridge, and remove the existing bridge. And all of those construction activities then ultimately kind of get stitched together over the course of the entire duration of the project, from beginning to end, when we wind up with the completed structure that you see here. So all of those construction activities numbers, excuse me, 1 through 19 are listed over here on the right-hand side of the slide. And we're going to focus primarily on construction activity 13, which is the swing span removal, and how that plays in with also construction activity 18, the lift span installation. Those two kind of go hand in hand. We have to remove the swing span in order to install each of the lift spans. But the primary change to the permit application is within construction activity 13. What we also wanted to do within the application was to, again, provide some additional clarity to some definitions and terms that we were using to define work that gets conducted within the waterway and within the navigation channel. And probably the best way to describe that is if we just walk through each one of those scenarios so that everybody has a clear understanding of what those definitions represent. So if we take a look at the existing bridge in this schematic here, looking to the north, you know, when the swing span is in the closed position, there are 2 navigation channels that are provided. There's about 16 feet of vertical clearance above mean high water, and you know, low clearance vessels can go through either side. You know, that includes small motorized craft, rowers, et cetera, that could pass beneath the bridge when the span is in the closed position. And then when the span's in the open position, as you see here, so now the navigation channels open up on either side. We still have 2 navigation channels, and now that vertical height restriction goes away, and that allows for taller height vessels to pass through. Okay, so when work starts to advance for construction of the new bridge, one of the goals of the project is to maintain both rail traffic and waterway traffic to the greatest extent possible. And throughout the course of construction, there may be periods of time where we have to conduct activity within portions of the waterway that may impact one side of the pivot pier, okay? But again, that goal is to keep the navigation channel, at least one of them, open to the greatest extent possible. Okay, so here comes our first clarification on terms that we're using in the application, and we'll use these terms kind of moving forward. So when there is construction activity within the waterway, one scenario is we have the channel is partially closed with a height restriction. So this is depicted here in this schematic where the span is in the closed position. We still have that 16 feet of vertical clearance, and there may be some construction activity, or there may be a piece of construction equipment that's within the navigation channel, and that side of the channel is blocked. So no vessels can safely pass, or physically pass for that matter, in that portion of the channel that is closed. But the opposite channel remains open. And what we've done in this schematic is that we've shown the west channel being open and the east channel being closed. That can flip, so that red box may go to the west, and then the east channel opens up. So through coordination with waterway users and the harbor master and the Harbor Management Commission, as well as the U.S. Coast Guard, all of that will be coordinated very closely as construction advances. So this represents the channel partially closed with a height restriction. Our next clarification to our terms is when we have a channel that's partially closed, but there's no height restriction. So there may be periods of time where we can open the bridge. And again, we want to be able to open the bridge. Hey, there's a little one that looks pretty interested in this. The partially closed with no height restriction, the span is open. And similar to what we saw with the height restriction, we've got construction equipment or activity in one side of the channel. The opposite channel remains open. And again, this scenario can flip from east channel to west channel, with the goal and the idea being that one of those navigation channels remains open for the greatest extent possible. And then finally, our last definition of how we are characterizing the navigation channel is when the channel is fully closed. So again, the goal is to have the channel open as much as possible. And there are identified instances where the channel has to be closed, where no vessels can pass. And that's because there's a construction operation that's going on that poses a certain risk to the waterway users. Safety obviously is our number one priority, so we don't want to compromise that. Or there may be just a physical blockage of the channel from construction activity, construction equipment. There may be some temporary supports placed in the waterway as well. And so the channel would be closed in this instance. So that's the fully channel closed. So I think we've got channel fully open, we have the partial closure, and then we have the full closure. So those are the definitions that we are working with. And then to kind of demonstrate that, we can use one of the construction activities where we build the piers. That's construction activities 9 and 10. So we've got the piers on either side of the navigation channel. They're placed, if you remember, outside of the navigation channel, and it allows the swing span to remain operable during most of the early portions of construction. And in this case, the green arrow represents the channel that would be open. Okay, so over here we're working and we have a barge, again in this schematic, that doesn't allow any traffic to move through that east channel. That's what the red X's represent. And then the green arrow represents the channel on the west side being open. As I mentioned, that open and blocked channel can flip from one side to the other. And if we still use kind of the same construction activity, now we're working over on the west side of the channel. So we've got that side blocked, but that green arrow represents the ability for vessels to pass through the east side, okay? So that's, again, just reinforcing the overall intent of maintaining waterway traffic during the course of construction. And these types of impacts are described within the DEEP application. So let's now get to construction activity number 13, and that is the existing swing span removal. You've probably heard us talk before about how wonderful that existing old swing span is, where it carries all 4 tracks, and it was really an engineering achievement more than 100 years ago. And obviously they may not have been thinking about removing that span because for the Walk Bridge project, that really complicates things. So as great as it has been over time, that 4 tracks being supported by the single structure really makes things challenging for us to be able to progress the construction. And if you take a look at the layout of the existing bridge, what makes it most challenging is that the layout of the new bridge is such that there's a physical conflict with the existing swing span and the new lift span to the south. So what we're doing here is we're looking to the east. This represents the existing pivot pier down here. This represents the existing swing span. And if we weren't to do anything with the existing swing span, you can see there's this overlap with the new south lift span truss. We can't change the track any more than what we have in order to meet design requirements and criteria. So we're faced with this conflict. And in the deep application, what we have is the presentation of two schemes that will provide contractor flexibility during construction to remove that existing swing span and to allow the new lift span to be installed. So in scheme 1 under construction activity, number 13, and again, this is really the heart of the updates that are being finalized in the deep application that differ from what was filed back in early March. So first of all, when we're ready to install the new lift spans, those lift spans are pre-assembled. They're assembled off-site. They're going to be placed on barges, and they'll be floated up to the bridge location. And again, we have to move the existing swing span out of the way in order to create that space that's needed to install the new lift span. So in scheme number 1, what we do is we have a series of temporary supports, and they're highlighted by yellow here so that you can kind of see them in this image. We're looking to the north here. So as construction progresses and we're getting ready to install the first lift span, the south lift span, these temporary supports are installed within the navigation channel. And when that happens, when that work starts, the navigation channel becomes closed. And what this slide rail system does is the swing span, fully intact, gets pushed along these temporary supports to the north. And that's what creates the space that we need to install the lift span. When we do that, we shut the railroad down completely to get the span out of the way, and the railroad remains closed until we can install the new lift span and make all the necessary connections and testing in order to open it back up to rail traffic. So there's two things going on with this. It has a full railroad closure, and it also has a 90-day full channel closure, meaning that with the presence of these slide rails and the removal of the swing span from its current location, the channel gets closed for 90 days. So that's scheme 1, and that's as described in the updated deep application. These next series of views just provide a little bit different perspective of how those slide rails appear. So we have the system within the waterway. We're closing the channel for 90 days while we're installing these slide rails, while we're moving the swing span to the north, then removing the swing span from the site, and then pulling out the slide rails. That encompasses that 90-day time period. And then again, here's the last perspective of scheme 1 with the temporary slide rail system.
How long will the railroad be closed for?
The railroad will be closed for a minimum of 96 hours. We're working through that now as it relates to better understanding what the overall testing requirements are going to be for Metro North in order to reopen the southern 2 tracks. But 96 hours is what we currently have. And there's a lot of risk,
I got a quick
inherent
question.
risk with that operation.
You're saying 90 days. On what timeline is it 90 days based on a year, 12 months? What months are you looking at?
Right. So that's a great question. And, you know, through our consultation with waterway users and other agencies. This work is planned to be performed. Overall, there's a window from November to April that this type of work could be planned. The intention is to actually conduct that 90-day period right in the middle of that. So in the December and January and February timeframe, where a lot of the recreational traffic is at a minimum, making accommodations for the commercial waterway users in this area as well. Their traffic tends to drop off compared to the rest of the calendar year. So we're really dedicated to completing this work during those winter months.
Off-peak months, that's what you're looking to do.
Off-peak, yep, that's a great way to put it.
Okay.
Okay, so that's scheme one. And scheme two that we're going to get into is also completed during that same block of time, right? During those off-peak periods of waterway use. So revisiting our cross-section here again, in scheme number two, what we do is we don't physically move the existing swing span to create that space that we need for the new truss. We actually leave the swing span where it is, but we remove half of it. So we actually will be removing the southern half, as you can kind of see in this schematic here. We'll get into some finer details here in a minute, but what this represents is that area or portion of the existing swing span that gets removed. So we don't slide it out of the way. We actually work to remove the southern half while we can still keep the two northern tracks open, okay? So when this work happens, we're already operating at a two-track railroad anyway for this portion of the project. And so these two tracks to the north are going to remain in service while this operation takes place. So that's one of the areas that the team really kind of looked at, is kind of minimizing what those rail traffic impacts represent and how they could be mitigated. So again, this is what that would look like. Over on the left-hand side, you see the conflict over here. And now when we remove part of that swing span, we got that physical space needed to install the lift span. So just like in scheme one, the new lift span is pre-assembled, it's built off-site and then floated into position. The south half of the existing swing span is removed in place. So what we see in this diagram here is kind of a portion of that removal in place, right? So we'll be working on both sides of the channel in order to remove this. There are no temporary supports, no piles driven in the waterway, so no impacts to the river bottom during this work. It's all done above the mud line. It allows for a continuous two-track operation. So on the north half of the bridge, those tracks are already in service. They're going to remain in service. I mentioned no temporary works in the waterway. What happens when this operation commences is that the swing span is no longer operable now. So we essentially have a fixed bridge in a temporary condition. That temporary condition right now is scheduled for a 180-day period. So there is no blockage of the channel, so there's no full closure of the channel. We'll have partial channel closures. If you remember, the partial channel closure is when you can use one side of the bridge versus the other. Unlike in scheme one, where the channel is fully closed for 90 days, we have no full channel closures with this option, and we have no piles in the river itself, but we do have that 180-day vertical restriction. So in this video here, and I'm going to move it along a little bit just because it takes a little time to get to a point where we actually see stuff happening. So as I mentioned, that work will be performed on one side of the navigation channel at a time, keeping the other side open, and kind of step through this a little bit so you can see how some of that work progresses. And now we flipped over, now we flipped over to, well, whoops, I hit the wrong key, sorry about that. Move this along. So now we're over on the, we got the west side open. I'm sorry, the east side is open. And now in this view, so that gets back to that point about the alternating navigation channels that remain open. So within the permit application, what you'll also see is reference to the fact that scheme 2 for the swing span removal is the department's preferred alternative for the swing span removal. So the idea is that we are presenting both of those schemes in order to have approval and authorization to complete both of them, with the idea being that the department's goal is to implement scheme number 2. And that represents the primary update to the DEEP application. And then in terms of schedule, we talked about this, which was a great question, but just to kind of crystallize that, if we bridged the time from, say, November 1st through April as that window when this work would happen, and we've met with upstream waterway users a couple of weeks ago and presented this to them to get their feedback, and it was generally acknowledged that, yeah, we could accommodate that off-peak time. It's a one-time occurrence within the project. It happens several years. Right now, it's currently scheduled within the 4th year of the project. So there's going to be a lot of communication, a lot of planning, understanding exactly when this is going to happen, close coordination with all stakeholders to ensure that everyone is kept up to date and is aware of the construction activity that will be taking place, when one channel will be open, when the other channel will be closed, et cetera. So that's the overall schedule for the swing span removal. So just to kind of recap, that scheme 1, it has piles that get driven within the navigation channel, and then those piles get extracted when the operation is completed. It has the 90-day full channel closure, and it has the full closure of rail service. Scheme number 2 has no full channel closure, except for that period when we actually have to install the lift span itself, but the swing span removal has no full channel closure. It has no railroad closure, and it has no piles installed within the waterway. So that's the update that you'll see when the DEEP application gets reissued to DEEP, and you'll be notified when that application has been reissued to the agency.
Chris?
What happens when you take the center out?
Yep, so the center pivot pier?
Yes.
Yes. So that is a construction activity as well, and that work will be performed once the swing span actually gets removed, right? Because we're using it for its center support. So the order of operations is swing span gets removed, lift span gets installed, and then after that, the removal of the existing foundation elements takes place. Those operations will be conducted within a marine enclosure with a turbidity curtain placed around that marine enclosure. And the removal of the foundation takes it all the way down to the timber that supports the pier itself. So all of the stone masonry will be removed. But all that work will be conducted within a marine enclosure with a turbidity curtain around that marine enclosure. And then there's other limitations and restrictions, if you will, that's applied to that work as it relates to work performed above the water and work performed above the water line. So those marine enclosures, the marine enclosures themselves are not dewatered, so the water will remain within the limits of those marine enclosures.
Chris, should we have a winter that puts 12 inches of ice on the area you're working in, how will that impact your project?
Like on there right there.
If there's ice on the waterway itself,
Yes.
right. So the ice within the waterway certainly will pose a challenge for a lot of the marine construction activities, particularly floating the new lift spans upriver will be a challenge. Maneuvering the barges within the waterway will be a challenge as well. Our understanding is the Coast Guard does have ice cutters that are available that can provide relief from those ice flows to continue to keep the waterway open. To say that construction won't be impacted would be inaccurate, but the team is prepared to address that type of phenomena.
Okay.
Chris, I'd hate to ask you to speculate, but obviously these are being presented as contingencies, or perhaps scheme one is a contingency. Would it be possible for you to speak to some of the things that might necessitate switching from a preferred scheme 2 to scheme 1?
Yeah, that's a good question. And you've characterized it accurately, is that treatment of the schemes as a contingency would be accurate, because as the work progresses, we as a team don't want to be faced with a situation where, and let's say that we're going with scheme number 2, and let's just say for instance that there's a change of conditions, or some other unforeseen event happens that prevents that partial removal of the swing span, and the timing is such that we need to advance the construction and get that new lift span on the south side installed. The department wants to be in a position to swiftly react, and they would have authorization to advance scheme 1 if it came to that. But to speak of an instance where scheme 1 would be used ahead of scheme number 2, nothing comes to mind. Again, it would have to be one of those completely unforeseen conditions that would drive the construction to go that route. That being said, it is a contingency, and if for some unforeseen reason construction would have to advance in that way, we want to have that already approved without having to have a drastic schedule impact to the work. You know, just to be a little bit more forthcoming than we already have been, scheme 2 really satisfies the overall scope of the project in terms of maintaining waterway user use of the navigation channel to the greatest extent possible, and also satisfying the maintenance of rail traffic to the greatest extent possible. Those were really kind of the initial goals of the walk bridge replacement from the outset. If you remember, all the way back from our environmental assessment and the purpose and need, all of those things are important. Rail traffic, navigation, and protection of the environment, all of those things are part of the purpose and need of the project. And Scheme 2 really hones in on meeting those goals and meeting that purpose and need. And again, Scheme number 1 is going to be available, but in actuality, there would be some other project impacts if we had to go and utilize Scheme number 1, but we want to have it as a contingency.
Well, thanks, Chris. I just perhaps to add one complication for Scheme 1. We had a fire at Oyster Shell Park over the winter, and the Norwalk FD indicated that it was very difficult to access landward and that our fireboat was critical in extinguishing that fire. So I think that needs to be a consideration here.
Yeah, absolutely. And as part of the overall project is that we have developed a marine use plan as well as a safety and security bulletin, if you will. And those will be, those documents have a solid framework for addressing emergency response based on consultation with fire department, marine police, and industry north of the bridge. So it's a valid point. It's something that the team has already taken into consideration, and hopefully does not have to be implemented, but certainly a strong consideration by the department already.
Okay. I have other questions. Others? I'll ask more. So, Chris, how does the dredging schedule change at Norwalk Harbor Management? You mentioned a lot of this has been engineered down to the day, maybe even the hour. Phase 1 versus Phase 2, how does that change your dredging timeline, if at all? I realize that these are not coincidental.
When you say Phase 1, are you talking about Scheme 1 and Scheme 2?
Scheme 1, I'm sorry. Yes, sir. Yes,
oh,
sir.
yeah. Yeah, no impact to the dredging schedule. So the way that the project kind of unfolds overall is that, we do have those construction activities that require dredging. We've got the channel dredging. We have the dredging for the vessel relocation. We have the work associated with the removal of the existing foundations. So all of that work kind of unfolds sequentially until we kind of hit that project milestone where we're ready to install the first of the 2 lift spans. And utilizing Scheme 1 versus Scheme 2 is not, won't affect any of that other dredging, because we're going to have that block. So if I go back to, I keep it in page down. So if we go back to this schedule, if we are doing either Scheme 1 or Scheme 2, it's going to happen within this window. And then all of the other construction activities, either before this happens or after that happens, aren't affected. And so they will take place as the schedule unfolds. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it does, Chris. Thanks. It's what I was
Okay,
looking
yeah.
for.
Okay, so yeah, just to kind of recap, either scheme 1 or scheme 2 will take place within this window. And then the rest of the construction activities happen before or after as scheduled.
Thanks. So we were forwarded the department's de-leading specification. Is the lead on the bridge a known commodity such that if phase 2 was begun, could we learn very late that phase 2 would be impossible due to lead conditions?
I'm trying to phrase this so that it's clear. The easy answer is no. So that span has been, essentially over time de-leaded, if you will, right? So it's very different than the approach spans that clearly have the paint system still on it. So we're not anticipating any late in the game change conditions relative to lead on the existing span itself. And just to be clear, both scheme 1 and scheme 2 will have steel removal operations that take place over the waterway.
Oh, great. Thanks, Chris. At Harbor Management, it was mentioned that it may be possible for the commissions to receive information / application from Eversource this summer. Is there anyone here in the meeting can speak to Eversource's involvement and where they are in the mix with all of this?
John, do you want to take that question?
Yeah, this is John Hannafin. My understanding, we've been communicating with Eversource and sharing our schedules. And all I do know is that they are working on their schedule, and I assume they'll be submitting it soon in order to line up with our schedules. Their permits are going to have to be acquired in a timely manner in order to line up with our projects. So they've been telling us that they're going to be submitting. Don't have direct knowledge of their applications or anything in them, but I assume that they're going to be going through their process relatively soon in order to line up with our schedule, which they still claim that they are in sync with us. So,
Right. Thanks, John. Early on in our discussions, it was mentioned that Eversource would need to take those lines down very early in this project. But in more recent discussions, if I'm remembering correctly, it was stated that that might not be necessary and that it could happen later. Where are we just in terms of where they fit in the timeline?
Yeah, and Chris, you can correct me or not, but I think it's a couple years into our project from a timeline standpoint. We have a lot of work that we can do under the lines as we build as we build the superstructure. But I think I have a member on here that could answer. Rich Bertoli's been working with the schedule. He can probably give you the finer details.
Yeah, so as we've refined how we are making the connection for our wires to go underground underneath the river with the new micro tunnel and secant pit work that we're doing, that work is actually taking longer than we had previously had planned for our cut and cover and some of our other activities. So from when we start to when we actually need Eversource to be down has increased in time. So it's gone from a year to approximately a year and a half to 2 years.
Well, thanks. Is there any scenario where that duct that has the traction cables, bridge power, comm cables could also take the high tension wires off of the towers as well?
You mean if that could go longer?
No, if in fact that the wires that are at the top of the towers now, the multi KVs, could go through this ductwork rather than south of the Straffolino. Is there any planning in that area?
I'll defer to Chris. They did look at possibly bringing that stuff up there.
Right. Yeah, that was a question and a scenario that was explored fairly early on in the design development process, and Eversource work proved to be a little challenging for a couple of reasons. The west side, so let's say, for example, that right now we have 2 pipes as part of our microtunneling that carry the bridge power and the rail systems for the walk bridge replacement. Eversource would require 2 additional pipes under the river, and then what the trick is on the west side of the river, the Eversource configuration was such that their lines are unique enough that limitations on the bend radii and the placement underground within North Water Street became overly complex, that it became a fatal flaw for that particular alternative. But it was looked at in conjunction with Eversource. So the design team and the department and everyone involved with the project kind of partnered with Eversource in doing that evaluation, but it did not prove to be an effective way to do that work.
Our high voltage consultant mentioned that just from a pure engineering standpoint, that the radii aren't a problem. So is this more just a question of cost to make something like that happen?
No, I don't think cost really played into that decision. It was the evaluation of getting Eversource transitioned at the depth that we would need to go over on the west side, and then get them back out of the ground, although they wouldn't get out of the ground, but they would get to a different elevation that would then take them within North Water Street, right in front of the Ironworks building, and then down to Washington, which proved to be very complicated and congested already with existing utilities, made that overly challenging to rule that alternative out.
And Chris, so when you're saying that was early on, so that's pre this duct, that's pre cut and cover and pre bridge HDD?
No, when I say early on, yeah, I may be dating myself because some of us have been involved with this effort for a long time. So it was not that early on. It was it was around the cut and cover period of project development that evaluation took place.
Okay, thanks.
So that was still a couple of years ago, but I guess in my mind it might have been considered early on. Maybe that wasn't the right frame of reference, but it was evaluated essentially in conjunction with the cut and cover, because we took a detailed look at other project impacts, such as now having the 4 pipes in close proximity to the bridge. And if you remember, we've got all of those temporary trestles that are there. It really complicated the installation of those. So there were a number of project impacts that were initiated by that concept.
Thanks, Chris.
Mhm.
Is there an update with respect to the use or not use of the Manresa property?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll defer to John on that.
Yeah, we are moving forward with Manresa as our staging area to build the trusses.
Maybe one or two more from me. So it was mentioned in Harbor that there was going to be a low headroom tug used perhaps to transfer, I assume, private company materials. Can you guys talk about the logistics of that? Where's that come from? Who pays for it?
Yeah, Rich, do you want to talk?
Yeah,
talk
you
to
can
that
actually,
as it relates to,
I could talk a little bit. So just like it will be provided by the program. The handoff would be south of the Straffolino Bridge, and the low headroom tug would push the barge all the way up to the Divine Brothers, I believe is the where they'd be going. If there's another barge delivery to a different facility, it would the same thing. They would hand off it below the Straffolino. Now this only occurs when the bridge is locked in position that one winter season. Other than that, the low headroom tug wouldn't be used. The contractor will still also have a low headroom tug on site as he's moving around barges that he needs to use to build the bridge. So that allows him to move his barges without having to worry about the bridge being open.
Thanks. I don't mean to be facetious, but when the low headroom tug is not in use, someone may want to cover it with camouflage netting. We have members of our community that think that that might be the solution that would obviate the construction of the bridge in general. So
That doesn't help with the sailboats, Steve.
Are you still gonna use Donardo's property?
Yes,
John, you want to answer that one?
yes, we are. That's our staging area.
Because I heard he put in for a permit for a bulkhead.
Oh, on his own property?
On his property.
Yeah, I mean, he's the property owner, but we are going to be using them after we, Rights of Way is working on those properties right now. So I don't know the status of the transactions, but we do need those properties in order to build the project. So
Okay. Because you said you guys are putting a bulkhead in, now I hear that he's putting one in or applying for one.
yeah, so we'll have to check into that.
Okay.
So is there any, I'll use the word contingency again, but contingency where bulkheads will be built on the South Water Street properties as part of this project?
Yeah, Chris, you want to mention that, how we have that, we have that in our permit?
right, yeah, and that's another area of project contingency that's reflected in the application. That remains unchanged presently from the March version of the application to any of the updates that we're talking about here tonight, in that the bulkhead down in the area of 68, 70, and 90 Water Street is shown in the application, reflected in the construction activities, described in the impacts, with the caveat saying that the intention is to not build that bulkhead, but again, in order to provide construction flexibility, to have that contingency plan in place based on any changed conditions that may be experienced over a 5 to 6 year time frame of construction, that if that bulkhead needed to be built, it's already permitted, But the department's intention right now is to not build that bulkhead along those waterfronts of 68, 70, and 90 Water Street.
Well, this commissioner rests. Anyone else from Harbor? Mr. Stedman? Chairman Romano? Jeff?
You know, it seems like every time we turn around, there's new information, and it sometimes gets confusing. And I know DiNardo has the right to put in for a permit, of course, as the property owner. But some of these things seem somewhat convoluted, and especially with Eversource in the mix, we don't really know what the intentions are based on timelines, when and who and how things will be done. So it puts us at an impasse on that particular piece of property or those properties.
Yeah, we understand your concern. Hopefully, when all the pieces of the puzzle, we're ready to submit our revisions, and Eversource submits their stuff. Hopefully, it'll tie it all up, and it's going to make it more clear on a project this complicated that we've all been working on for I think almost 7 years now.
Yeah.
I think
No, John, you guys have been phenomenal, and we cherish our relationship. It's Eversource is the real source of frustration for us.
Understood.
Jeff, did you want to weigh in?
Just a couple of questions for John and Chris. For the benefit of the Shellfish Commission, could you summarize, excuse me, the status of your applications to the other agencies, the Corps of Engineers and the Coast Guard? I think you said that your first priority was to get the DEP application resubmitted or clarified, and then you would proceed with the other applications?
Yeah, I can clarify that, Jeff. So like I said, we're going to, I think by next week, get the DEEP applications resubmitted. And then within 2 weeks after that, I think before Memorial Day, we would have the Army Corps and Coast Guard applications submitted. So our plan is by the end of the month to have all the applications in place, because we really need to get this project moving and get in construction. So that is our timeline.
And then thinking about the schedule, are there provisions in the Coast Guard and Corps of Engineers applications for public hearings that those agencies would decide to have on their own?
I'm not an expert on their processes, but I'll defer to someone else if they know that. But I think they have the option to do. I know they notice. I don't know if they do hearings. I don't know the answer to that.
And then regarding, I know we talked about this. It's just bear with me. But with the Eversource status, do you know what their intention is to coordinate the approvals they need from the Siting Council with DEEP? I mean, some years ago, I think DEEP noted that the proper procedure would be to go to the Siting Council first and get the Siting Council's approval before submitting to DEEP. Because theoretically, the Siting Council could not agree to it or say it has to be done in a different way, and that would make them have to modify their DEEP application. Do you know how they plan to proceed with that, with dealing with those two approvals?
No, I don't. I mean, I guess we'd have to wait and see until they submit what they submit. But I assume they're following the protocol of the state statutes.
Because I think at one time they also talked about locally that the Siting Council would hold a public hearing on this proposal. But I guess we'll, like you said, we'll just have to wait and see how it all falls together. But it would have been nice if Eversource had communication with the Harbor Commission and the Shellfish Commission to talk about the status and alert us as to what's coming and what we should prepare for. And then the other question, I think at one point you talked about needing to have to moor or anchor work barges in the harbor or in the outer part of the harbor. Is that still, that's still part of your application, I'm assuming. I don't recall it right now, but you'd have,
Yes, it is. We still have, I mean, I don't know if you have any of those information, Chris, but we have the locations. Excuse me. I think we have, do you remember the exact locations, Chris? Can you recite that?
I can, yeah, if you give me a second, I can,
and because we thought that if you use Manresa Island, that may be an opportunity to use the old barge terminal there instead of having to anchor or more large barges in the harbor, but I don't recall that now.
yeah, I think, you know, the idea with the use of Manresa Island is that that has a specific construction purpose that's planned. So it's already scheduled to be occupied, if you will, by construction barges where the lift stands will be assembled.
Okay. And then the other thing is, I think, I'm sorry, I can't recall all these things, so I can't remember them all, but you don't need any city land use approvals to use Manresa Island. And you just need the approval from the owner, and that's what you're working on now to come up with an agreement with NRG that would allow you to use this. Is that?
Yeah, we've gone through the, this is John again. We've gone through the public process. You know, we'll submit our applications as part of our permit packages, and then our right-of-way unit will negotiate with the property owner.
All right. So that's still in the works then.
Yeah. Yeah, until we get our permits submitted and approved, everything is, you know, waiting out there for, you know, approval. That's why we really, really want to get the applications in. We really want to get into construction because, you know, every day we wait is a delay, and, you know, delay costs. So we want to get the construction as soon as possible.
And you have the funding in place now for the work.
Yep. Funding stream is set up.
All the funding is all right, set up.
Yep.
Anybody else have any more questions?
Thanks, John and Chris.
Yep.
Thank you, guys.
Okay. We'll move on now. Thank you for giving us a
Shut the screen up.
breakdown.
All right. Thank you. Have a good
Thank
evening.
you.
Enjoy your night, guys. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye. All right, treasurer's report.
Pete, we're going to include Ms. Linnell Jones' presentation as the second half of public comment tonight.
Oh, I didn't know she was she on?
She is on. She's in as an attendee. So
Oh, okay.
moderator, if you could elevate Linnell. It's just listed as a first name. And
Done.
Yes,
and
there
Mi-
I am.
there you are. And Ms. Jones will need screen sharing capability, please.
Thank you.
Okay,
The
you
floor.
have the floor.
Okay, hold on. Thank you. Hi, and thank you for listening. This evening, I will introduce my presentation, which commissioners have and is available for anyone. You'll hear about two separate situations. The first is a drainage system the Wilson Point Property Owners Association constructed over the last 7 years with no permits or review. Because Wilson Point has private roads, there is no access to city sewer. So over 80 private septic systems and no DPW oversight. The second deals with the septic and sewage disposal protocols at the Norwalk Yacht Club. It's not just water that matters today, but also water, not just water quality that matters, but also water quantity, given flash storms and high tides. What's been learned about septic systems by the water resulted in a program on Long Island where homeowners are given $30,000 to upgrade to new septic technology. New risks, new laws, new standards, new questions. I've lived on Wilson Point for over 35 years. My property overlooks Nathan Hale Drive. As I mentioned, there are two critical issues requiring your attention. This is one, the Wilson Point Property Owners Association's drainage and the Norwalk Yacht Club. This is an overview of Wilson Point showing the location of, the location of the Yacht Club on Nathan Hale at 10 Nathan Hale Drive. There have been 4 major drainage projects on Nathan Hale Drive. First, in red to the right, are the new point source drainage pipes placed in 2014 in front of the Erdman property. Second, in blue, is the Timmerman project, which laid 450 plus feet of new pipe to drain through the Wilson Point Beach Club right here. Third, in orange, is the Draper project, which laid pipe tied to the drainage from Point Road lawns on the hill to pipes laid in the 2016 Timmerman project out to the sound. Fourth in purple is the Jones project right here. Not me, but Lori Jones, a member of the Harbor Commission. Oops, sorry. And this is a drainage from the road and the lawns across the street along our property line. Another non-documented drain never reviewed. All of Nathan Hale, including the Yacht Club, is highly prone to flooding. You can see this is Lori's house right here, the Timmerman project here, all Nathan Hale Road. Here are pictures of the work done for the 2019 Jones drainage project. Oh, wait, I have to go backwards, sorry. Here. And here are pictures of the work done for the 2014 Erdman and 2017 Draper projects. Here are excerpts from Wilson Point meetings outlining the scope of the 2016 Timmerman project. This project cost more than another Wilson Point drainage project, the Shagbark project, which involved DEEP, the city, and other permitting authorities. Oh, sorry. I made numerous requests to the Wilson Point board to review the plans and documents for the 2016 Timmerman project. When I was given 5 emails and told that was it, I made a request through the Freedom of Information Commission. Following the FOI hearing where everyone was under oath, I was given an invoice for part of the work. Here, you can see 3 of the email given to me to prove no permit was required. As you can see, they are nothing but self-affirmation notes. Christian Nagler, who was president of the association at the time, is a partner at a major Wall Street firm specializing in SEC disclosure. Here are 2 more of Christian's self-affirmation email. Note the dates and my email exchange with Tom Closter. This is the information Lori Jones referred to in her email following the Harbor Commission meeting last month, when she wrote, I had been given everything several times proving work had been approved by DPW and DEEP. Here is the invoice for 2/3 of the Timmerman project costs. No invoices for the other 10,000 of work. Plus, this shows that the association didn't pay taxes. Does that raise any questions? This is a slide with a few of my outstanding questions regarding the various Nathan Hale projects. Next is the Norwalk Yacht Club, 10 Nathan Hale Drive. As you can see from the picture, so right here in the red, most of the available land is covered with impermeable asphalt. The septic field right here, which serves 260 family memberships, guests, events, camp, and the single family who lives in the area, is outlined in the red with the star right here. The septic field has multiple racks, literally stacks of kayaks. So a very heavy structure covers and compresses this limited green area, the leaching field. In 2008, when the club expanded, DEEP required a portable pump out to be available for the 152 moored vessels, since the club was not connected to city sewer. City sewer would require, a stationary pump out would require being connected to city sewer. Here is a brief overview of the Norwalk Yacht Club. Note the pump out is not offered as a service, despite being required to be available by DEEP. They do offer fuel. Here is a land map of the club in 1961, highlighting restrictions on septic on the property. This was because the soil was left over from an oil company, Railway. It was questionable in 1961. These are the permits and septic designs from 63, 79, and 90. Note, in the 90 permit, no permit on file. System certified, substantially correct. I'll let you read the city and state approval history for the Norwalk Yacht Club. More history, but the highlights are that the city of Norwalk turned down the yacht club twice. The club sued, and the judge decided this case based on testimony by experts hired by the yacht club. Wilson Point had hired their own expert, Stearns and Wheeler, but the board of the association at the time, mostly members of the yacht club, ignored the report and gave the yacht club what they needed for this judge, an agreement about everything but environmental and septic concerns. After all, the Norwalk Yacht Club had an expert that testified it had not been proven nitrogen harmed anything. In both 2005 and 2008, P&Z denied the yacht club their permits for extension. You can see the reasons, most of the ones highlighted here, and 4 of the reasons here: environmental, septic, drainage, flood. Okay, but following the judge's decision, there's nothing that P&Z could do. These are excerpts from the engineering report Wilson Point commissioned in 2005, and the report has been shared with your commission. When Wilson Point commissioned this report, the board just wanted to know the facts, but they didn't like what they read, so they ignored it. Reporting pollution is not easy, but in this case, with the Coast Guard report, I got the attention of the EPA. I thank the City of Norwalk Department of Health for always taking my calls and sharing information. Please don't tell me this club cares about the environment. They knew exactly what they were doing, denied it, and started again. The Coast Guard tracked the red paint pollution from the Norwalk River to the yacht club. This is a permit that the yacht club has right now, and special condition 11 and 12 seem clear to me. If the portable pump out is not available for use this season, listed as a member service, if this year there is no holding tank to store waste, no septic truck service, as explained by the general manager last fall, I will continue to file complaints and hope that you join me. I have no idea why condition 12 was changed. Did the shellfish, the reason for condition 12 in the first place, move? The environmental violation found shows the club is either clueless about environmental laws or they just don't care. These are my outstanding questions for the conditions at the Norwalk Yacht Club. I'm sure following reading and reviewing this, you will have your own. Strategically important, not just to Norwalk, but to Long Island Sound and the Connecticut coast. My appendix includes the early history, as well as all the documents I can make available for anyone. Thank you. Stop share. Thank you.
That's a lot of work. A lot of work.
Thank you for getting a copy of the commit and reading it. Thank you. I know it's just one voice, but.
Where do you live in Wilson Point?
I'm at 10 Point Road, so I am right above and I have a view of everything that goes on Nathan Hale, as well as the yacht club.
How many
It's not
people?
that I'm against the yacht club, sir. I think actually, when we had all this and I questioned it, I think it was good for everyone.
How many people on Wilson Point belong to that yacht club?
I couldn't tell you, but certainly 8 out of 10 people, 8 out of 11 on the board.
And the rest are out of towners?
A lot of out-of-towners. There's been recently a lot of turnover. We didn't used to have a lot of turnover, but now we do. I will say that at our last meeting, the president mentioned, and I'm sure this was after his conversation with Joe, that the common practice of taking the biodegradable blue poop bags and throwing them down our drains might not be a good idea. And people said, well, they're biodegradable. We definitely need some education. People move out here, they don't even know they're on septics. We had homes that were draining directly into the sound. You can always get somebody willing to work for cash and no permit.
Good point. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Pete?
That's all I needed. I just wanted to present. And thank you, Steve and Mr. Johnson, for inviting me to speak.
You're most welcome, Linnell.
Yep.
So
You're welcome.
I would like to move that this commission, in conjunction with the Norwalk Harbor Management Commission and the Mayor's Water Quality Committee, commission a site visit to include water quality testing, including fecal coliforms and nitrogen and other parameters to be determined.
That's a motion. I second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. So moved. We'll get hold of people. When we get Dick Harris to come too.
How does the commission get access to the property? It's a gated
We bring the
community.
police with us,
Okay,
just like we do any other investigation. We bring the
Say you're
police with
visiting
us.
Linnell Jones.
Yeah, and the intertidal zone is open to us, and access to the outlets on city business is certainly allowed, but we will certainly have constables.
Okay,
and you know, I'd like to, from a harbor perspective, I'd like to see Jeff involved as well, if we could work around his schedule, and Dick Harris in particular, and Joe, because he knows the protocols, he knows the issues and the problems that could happen, and what the issues may be. So
Sounds good.
I don't know how, from a Shellfish point of view, that, and you guys did the right thing, I think, personally, because how can you ignore this kind of information coming forward without doing a due diligence?
well, I know they passed a law, you can't spray, you can't power wash without having a holding tank for that. You have to have a separator for when you're washing boats down, power washing boats. So that's already a federal, state law, I know. Because I know, Bobby Bloom put one in, I know they put one in at Cove. They put a bigger one in at Cove. And I know Vinco's got one, they all have to have them now, so. I know, what's that yacht club over in Westport? On Saugatuck, I know they have one. I mean, just that alone. So if they don't have a system for that, they can't even be power washing a boat. And that's not even counting checking if there any leakage from their septic or what. So I think we definitely should go out there and check it and get some samples and stuff. And if they're not conforming to the state regulations on cleaning boats and stuff, then Let's call DEP down on that.
Jeff has his hand raised. Pete.
Okay,
Steve,
Jeff.
the purpose of the site visit would be to look at a particular storm drain and to test the discharge from that storm drain.
I don't think,
What about the matter concerning the Norwalk Yacht Club? What would the site visit achieve with respect to that issue?
so, I mean, it's been mentioned with respect to this power washing and containment of anti-fouling materials. I mean, we would need X-ray vision to see the underground there.
So you would notify the yacht club that you'd like to speak with someone on site to discuss the measures that they're employing to
Yeah, I
do
mean,
the apparently objectionable stuff.
certainly as a courtesy, we always inform
All
the
right.
property owner of our interest in a site visit.
Yes.
Sounds good.
So to discuss those matters with a representative of the yacht club and also to take samples of discharge through a particular storm drain or drains that have been identified.
Correct. So
Okay.
yeah, so the motion that carried includes nitrogen, includes fecal coliforms and other parameters.
And would those tests be paid for through the existing testing program that both Harbor and Shellfish support through Earthplace, or how would those tests be? Or we're gonna figure that out?
Yeah, we can figure that out, but we
All
have
right.
we have a budget to do that.
All right.
I think a protocol will need to be developed to specifically what you're gonna do.
Yeah, well, we're gonna have to meet on that to set it up anyways.
And
Yeah,
it's a reasonable request that both the Harbor Commission and Shellfish Commission have concerns about water quality and policies to pursue. And we've received an inquiry or a complaint, and it's reasonable to investigate that. So I think that's, my opinion, a good motion.
Especially since there's all oyster beds there,
Yes,
natural and private.
yes.
So I definitely think we should investigate. We'll have to get together, talk about it, and set it up, see, can we set an appointment up so everybody's available, and
Mhm.
Here's some more pictures.
Tom and Tara got something to say?
I was just, who would be the enforcing agency if there was violations? I mean, would it be DEP? Who would have teeth in this to be able to stop what's going on if there is any violation and then enforce our recommendations?
That would be DEEP.
Thank you.
They will put a cease and desist or whatever they're gonna do. And then fine them till they correct it. So. Okay, so we got that. Let's,
is,
treasurer's report.
All right, guys, I'm gonna jump.
Okay,
thank you.
Ciao
John.
for now.
Tom?
We're up to date on all our invoices. The only thing that is this month's phone bill. We have no revenue. I don't get our first revenue check from Fisherman's World till sometime in September. We still have to discuss what we're going to do with and how we're going to set up the structure regarding the oyster boats and the oyster companies. That still hasn't been finalized, so we have no income from that either. Tom, I don't know if she sent you over a year-to-date what the final numbers are, but that's it.
yeah.
The only thing going out is the phone bill, and we haven't received any income as of the end of the year from 2020.
I called over to them to see what activity there was. She said no transactions for April, and the balance coming in is $23,342.35.
Okay.
So we're healthy as far as our balance goes, which we can help. We have enough, I think, to offset any tests that need to be done that Commissioner Bartusz was talking about down at Wilson Point. So, we'll wait to see what our invoices are and what our income is, and hopefully we can get together soon and take care of what the new fee structure for the boats.
I agree.
Captain
One of the things
Kramer
though,
was
that,
on earlier, but it looks like he stepped off.
Yeah,
who?
John's off.
Tim Kramer. No, Tim Kramer was on
Tim
earlier.
Kramer's off too. He was on earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we're gonna have to get hold of them. They're either gonna have to, I mean, this way, if they have a in-person meeting next month, we can have them come and talk. So,
Agreed, and we also have to decide, is the fee structure gonna be retroactive, which I think we agreed we weren't gonna do, as it gonna start this year or next year? We're not in any hurry to need the income, so if they can make a decision, we can start in 2022. I think we're healthy enough, but I think we need to move on this before the end of the year, and I know we're saying it's only we're only in May, but this is gonna go quick, and they need to meet and tell us what they wanna do, and us approve it.
I know, that's why
It's been dragging for over a year now. I mean, in my opinion, we did the right thing. They didn't like it. Okay, so now the ball's in their court. What do you want to do? What do you want?
yeah,
And have them get back to us.
that's it. Well, they're gonna have to come to our meeting. They're gonna have to come to our meeting some way or another. At least, the majority, well, there's basically 4 oystermen, 5. You got Bloom's on the east side, Bloom's on the west side, Dougie Stabell, Dave Hop, what's his name now? I forget his name now.
And Pete, they don't have to come
Kramer.
to our meeting. They can have a meeting themselves and just make a presentation through one of the commissioners of what they want. Even
Right.
if they tell you this is what we want to see, and then we either vote yes or no or modify it.
Well, Dave
But
Hop is our one
Kaiser.
for the shell fishermen. Dave Hop is, so he's the one that's supposed to come, talk to them and then come to see what we want.
Yeah, would it be possible to reach out to Dave so that he could come back and advise us?
Yeah,
I
he
mean,
just
prior-
doesn't know how
prior-
to Zoom or anything like
No,
that.
no, but prior to the meeting.
Hey, Pete,
Yeah.
with City Hall opening up, we got to go back to go live meetings.
I know. I agree 100%.
I mean, I know it might be comfortable for some people, but I think it's time we start thinking about it, even if you set
One of the
July.
problems is like Dave, he doesn't know how to Zoom.
That's
Norman
what,
doesn't know. Norman
what-
doesn't know how to Zoom.
that's what I'm referring to. Those guys been out every meeting before we got locked down with COVID, before we decided to go on Zoom. And
Right.
Their input's
So-
very important and we miss it. And you're not going to force them to go on Zoom because you just said they don't know how to get on Zoom.
Well, number one, they want to know what we want, what we're asking for, and then they'll come back with something else. So what we should do is, didn't we have something already?
Yeah, we
Not
did.
from them. We had what we voted on. They contacted you and they said they were against it. And then we asked them, well, come back to us, but they never came back to us. And we're talking almost a year now.
Well, that's because of pandemic.
But they could meet and come back and tell us this is what we'd like to see.
I know. So what
As we
I'll do
keep
is,
kicking
I gotta
the
get a
can down
copy.
the road.
I gotta get a copy of that, hand it to them, and then have Dave Hop show up at the next meeting. Or find some way to get them to talk.
Yeah, I'm not prepared to speak to actual fees right now, but in my view, any structure should include some per bag price, even if it's minimal, just because it allows us to quantitate the catch.
Yes. They really don't like to tell you what they caught, but we should be able to know just for what this sound is producing, even if it's real healthy and, you know, so.
The year-over-year data is important.
Okay, let's go with Secretary's report.
Report.
Nothing really, right? Okay, committee reports, Health Department.
3.41 inches of rain fell for April, compares to 5.01 a year ago. The average over the years is 4.25 inches for April. Total for the year right now is 12.37. No notifications of bypass from the sewage treatment plant for April. Closure on the beds, April 12th, 0.81 inches, closed the half-inch area. On 4/15, 1.43 inches, closed the half-inch and the 1-inch area. And on April 25th, 0.62 inches of rain fell that closed the half-inch area. That's the health department report.
Okay, thank you. Wastewater treatment, we don't have anyone. Water quality.
Water quality, we just had a meeting prior to this, which many of you guys were at. Under new business, what we have to worry about is the invasion of a mitten crab. Dick Harris has reported catching them up in Housatonic. There's no evidence of them here yet, but once they're here, they go up rivers. So they'll invade not only the harbor, but they'll invade up the Norwalk and Silver Mine rivers. And they damage the area by burrowing into riverbanks and stuff like that. So when they burrow and then spring rains come and they start flooding, the riverbanks collapse. So it could be a nasty thing. We also discussed revising our mission statement and putting together a report, in which case we can look at the city and ask the different agencies to come up with a budget so that we actually can afford equipment or get a contractor to do testing for us on an as-needed basis. And that was roughly it.
Okay, thanks. Permits. They moving along, Tom?
Slowly, not as quick as last year. The numbers aren't as good as last year. But last year, because of the shutoff, they were abnormally high. Once again, I'll get a final count when we reconcile towards the end of August.
Okay, Norman's going to be dropping clams at the beach and Betts and not Shay.
Middle Passage.
Yeah, Middle Passage. He's going to be dropping clams in those three areas. Probably a couple 100 bushels in each. So we'll have clams again.
Great.
Okay, police. So no police are here?
No.
How about harbor management?
Well, can I say something, Pete?
Yes.
John Pinto participated in a meeting last week that Planning and Zoning convened to discuss waterfront zoning and the city's industrial zones, they called it, on the waterfront. And now I understand the city has hired a consultant to study uses of the waterfront. And to the extent that that study may come up with recommendations for marine commercial uses in the marine commercial zone and affect water dependent uses, I think that's something that the Harbor Commission and the Shellfish Commission should be aware of and participate in. And I think we've said that the city can't, prepare the a new harbor management plan for the Harbor Commission. Only the Harbor Commission can do that. But I think we need to be aware of and be involved in any proposals to change waterfront zoning that might affect water dependent uses. That's just something to be aware of. We'll keep on top of it.
I totally agree, Jeff. Mr.
Yes.
Kleppen had invited me. I just couldn't make it because of work that day.
Yeah.
Okay, make a motion to accept the committee reports.
Make a motion to accept the committee reports in whole.
Second.
Motion.
All in favor?
So moved.
Okay. Old business. Any old business? Okay. New business.
No, but we will next week. Just this afternoon, another application came in from Mr. Hiltz.
Oh.
So I haven't even opened it yet.
Okay, our next meeting will be June 3rd. All right,
Long
Call the
meeting,
meeting.
Peter.
Huh?
Long meeting.
yes, make a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second,
Motion.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Bye.
Aye.
Bye, Joe.
See you in a
Good
month.
night, guys.
Good night, everyone.
Thank
Men's
you,
night.
everyone.
Men's
Okay.
night.
Thank you,
Steve,
Joe.
I'll get hold of you
On a
this
note,
week to
Dave, on
talk
a note,
about
Dave.
that.
Okay, sounds good, Pete.
Laurel's
Okay.
Club, Joe, I'm in.
Hey,
Bye,
Joe, I'll
Pete.
give you a call too when we figure something out.
All right, buddy. Bye-bye. Bye, Joey.
You too, Tom.
Whoa!